Good morning, everybody. And thank you for the introduction, Art. Apparently I didn't have enough coffee to get that set up, but it was a fun night last night. Hopefully everyone else is ready to go. So anyways, I'm the Executive Director of Technology for Homes.com, and we wanted to take a few minutes of your time this morning just to talk about what it's like for us to operate a national listing database inventory, and how we think they're relevant to the resale audience, and some of the initiatives that are underway today. So just to start out, what is Homes.com? Michael alluded a little bit to this yesterday, but we've been in this industry for a long time, since the early 90s. And over that time, our mission hasn't really wavered much. We're always looking to connect transaction-ready buyers and sellers with real estate professionals. Originally, we did it through print media, and now we're doing it through digital. So what do we want to have this conversation for about today? Well, if you look at our page here, we all deal with a lot of very common elements, right? We've got agents, addresses, prices, features, descriptions. It's all pretty simple stuff, and we all recognize what these are, right? But what's funny is there's many days where we feel like this when we're dealing with this information. And we kind of want to show you a little bit about where that comes from. So let's take a look at that. So these are the topics I want to cover today in this kind of high-level overview we're going to have on this subject. So we're going to talk about what our inventory looks like, what the delivery is like, what our discovery process is like, something we call streaming to manage all these sources, and then we'll get into a little bit about internet tracking. And then we'll kind of at the end tie it all together and talk about some of the RESO initiatives, why we're investing in their support. So currently at Homes, we process over 5.8 million active listings. And you'll find those coming from 834 unique sources, and we have hundreds of file mappings to manage each one of those. If we break those down, you can see that about 640 or so are directly from MLSs, which is great, we like that. We also have a smaller number that are coming from brokers, and typically those are in support of subscription products. And then lastly, we have a small number that also come from new home builders, from rental agencies, and from other listing aggregators. So when we talk about how those are delivered to us, there's quite a few technologies in play, and most people should be familiar with these, but we get a lot of them over REPS, FTP, both push and pull still, HTTP, and web services as well. So if you look at the breakdown of those, the majority of them do come from RED servers. But we do still support quite a number of them over traditional FTP. In all, we're getting data from over 20 different vendors and many direct MLS sources as well. So I'm starting to try to paint a picture here of what this inventory looks like to manage in our space today, right? If we look at the frequency now of how we get them, you can see we get about 450 or so suppliers that are updated at least hourly, and some much more frequently than that. And this is really the area we strive for. This is what we want to see, right? But there's about another 350 or so that are at least daily, sometimes multiple times a day. We like to consider this a bare minimum. But unfortunately, we still have about 40 people who don't provide us listing updates even daily. I'm sure that that's nobody in this room. Obviously, if you're vested enough to attend the RESO events, you know how important timely listing updates are, right? So in support of this inventory, these delivery methods, and this frequency, we processed about 62 million listing updates last month. And when we talk about those 62 million updates, we kind of wanted to break down exactly what we're doing when we're going through those transactions. So we have kind of what we call a discovery pipeline that we're going to look at and kind of walk over each step here. And these are how they outline. So the first one I want to speak to is the image processing. Generally, we do these actually in this order too. The image processing comes first because it has the most variable time. What we do in that stage is we look at URLs for listings, or for images we're given for listings, we check for modifications, we check for timestamp changes, anything that lets us know we need to retrieve that image file again. We do retrieve that image file over the internet, and there's our variable time. We also take those and build our own CDN cache for serving them to our customers. From there, the next thing we do is geospatial targeting. So we look at the address of the property, and we run that through a Bing spatial data service and get a location for it. And we also, at the same time we get a location, we measure the accuracy of that address based on some confidence scores that are given to us. From there, we take that property and we put it through a property record matching service. And what we're doing there is we're comparing the address and spatial identification we have through our 100 million plus property inventory. And we do that so that we can maintain a historical URL on listings on our site and keep the consumer experience similar between on and off market statuses. The next thing we do is run it through a school tagging system. Exactly what it sounds like. We take the location of that listing, we compare it to known school zone attendance boundaries, and that allows us to add homes.com school scores and school contextual data to that listing. Next, we do something very similar with neighborhoods. We'll take the location and run it through known residential neighborhood and subdivision boundaries so that we can add that information as well. After that, there's a data deduplication process. We do get a lot of the same listings from multiple sources, and it's upon us to make sure we identify when those listings are the same from different services or from different providers, and then we can take that information and allows us to prioritize which one we're going to display on homes.com based on our own business rules. Next, we move into a profile construction. So we're going to build agent and broker profile pages on our site. We need to keep those up to date with any demographic changes that are sent to us or any listing inventory updates. And lastly, for us, we do a publication step, which is it allows us to compile all this data we've now run through this discovery stage together and aggregate it together in a single document. And then we use that document structure to service our requests to our consumers. So just looking through that discovery process, these are some of the numbers we deal with on a monthly basis. You can see they're pretty large. All I'm trying to show you is that it's a large scale when you're managing 800 listing data sources, right? If you were to summarize those all together, that's about 1.9 billion transactions a month, which comes to an average of about 733 operations a second. And we developed a process internally. We kind of labeled it streaming. It's kind of a buzzword now, but I don't mean to mix those together. For us internally, streaming is this. If you could visualize your listings as a school of fish, right? An individual listing was a fish. You can use a picture like this to understand that we have a large influx of listings coming in that need to be run through this discovery process. So you can see those stages laid out there. The benefit of the system we built is that an individual listing can execute this entire discovery process and not be dependent on the outcome of the rest of the school. So this allows us to get listings on the site and updated as quickly as possible, and it also ensures that our entire discovery process is completed before any listing is exposed on homes.com. So it'll include all those things from images all the way to neighborhood school data. That'll all be complete. And you can see that we can then return a single image a single listing enhanced from that school while we continue to process the rest of them. And of course, we do this at scale. So in reality, we're running many fish from many schools through the system at one time. And on average, this system that we run through takes about 5 seconds for a single listing to run through that process. And the majority of that 5 seconds is spent on downloading images. That's really by far the largest part of that stage. So I want to switch gears a little bit from listing management and talk about performance metric tracking at homes.com. I'm a Floridian, so I had to get an opportunity to drop in a white sand beach. So please come visit us because I don't want to pay state income taxes and tourist dollars. So it looks just like that. But we have about 65 organizations receiving performance metrics from homes.com today. We'd love to have more, so if that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to me after this. To date, we service these over many different platforms. We do some third-party APIs, we still FTP files, we even email PDFs. So it's kind of all over the place. And if you sat in the Internet Tracking Work Group, these are things we talk about. And depending upon the implementation, some of these events are real time. We'll send them to you right when they happen, and sometimes they're aggregated over a period of time, such as a day, a week, or a month. And these are some of the fields we have that we share on a regular basis with these providers. For the most part, their naming convention makes sense if you read over them. You know what they are. The problem that we see is that this is our names. You're going to get these metrics from other providers. They may use different names. And in order to get a consistent view, it can be difficult. When I was writing this up, I kind of likened it. I have kids. I'm sure we have lots of people in here with kids. I kind of likened it to these Jelly Belly jelly bean recipes they have me look up, right? So if you could think of that, those aggregated analytics you want to share with your customers as that candy apple or that s'more, you can see we've got great instructions for how to put that together. 2 greens and a red, and you've got the candy apple, right? The problem is, you come home from Costco with a container like this, right? And there's 10 different green ones, there's 10 different red ones, and it's really hard to get that consistent metric that you want out. At some point you're going to throw a margarita flavor in there and it's going to be disgusting, right? So this is kind of the same struggle we see with internet performance metrics, and that's why it's important for us to talk about that. So that's going to lead me into my last slide here, which is going to just talk about RESO and why we think some of these initiatives are so important. So first of all, in the data dictionary, I think in this presentation I've shown you that we have a lot of listening sources and a lot of data to maintain, and it's very custom, and it's very laborious. I think RESO themselves have even said that there's just a lack of clarity and definition of the service, and that's something we need to improve. Second, there's a web API that Jeremy actually referenced earlier, and our point here in this presentation is that we have just too many delivery formats and non-standard technologies in use, and we'd really like to see that simplified. And there's even language on the RESO side about this that says that for speed and simplification purposes, this is really important. And then lastly, on the internet tracking piece, these are not RESO endorsed logos, by the way. I just found this one funny. There's just, like we pointed out, there's too many formats we're sending out, and there's a lack of clarity in understanding what the fields are. And even RESO has said it's an essential tool for evaluation for your customers, and this is something we really need to get right. So that's my presentation, and I hope you gained some insight into what we do at Homes.com. Do you have any questions?